On behalf of government, the case of Oxfarm International, where they came up with an allegation that New Forest Company had grabbed land. The British charity Oxfarm International published in the UK report on land and power on 22nd September 2011, based on a study on land grabs it ostensibly undertook in 5 countries: Uganda, Indonesia, Guatemala, Honduras, Southern Sudan, as part of its global Grow campaign. In Uganda, Oxfarm International and its partner, the Uganda Land Alliance, selected the operations of a New Forest Company as the case study. New Forest Company is a UK-based international company, National Forest Authority licensed under the government policy of public-private partnership to establish and manage commercial plantations in Namwasa and Luunga Central Forest Reserves in the districts of Mubende and Kiboga, respectively. The Oxfarm International study focused on the New Forest Company, international financials, and the actions of government of Uganda with respect to the evictions of encroachers in Namwasa and Luunga for Central Forest Reserves. The report has generated a lot of queries from various stakeholders, both locally and internationally. And I understand it was in the paper here. Government welcomed the efforts of Oxfarm International, and indeed at the minute I welcome them, but I've been working with them, as a process by which NGOs as part of civil society can reform and enrich the participatory process of policy development in Uganda, and it raised the critical issues for public debate. Government also welcomed the NGO's recognition of the importance and value of responsible foreign investment in Uganda's economic growth. Oxfarm International launched its report in the United Kingdom and USA, and has not formally launched it in Uganda, which is a bit worrying because this report was carried out in Uganda. I would have imagined that in good faith they should have launched it here first. However, government finds it imperative to clarify on a number of serious allegations and insinuations which have arisen either directly or indirectly as a result of the publication of this report. These allegations inaccurately portray government and the New Forest Company in a very bad light. These include, but not limited to: 1 is the reference to the New Forest Company investment in Uganda as a land grab. According to Oxfarm International, a land grab refers to a land acquisition which do one or more of the following: 1, violate human rights, and particularly the equal rights of women. 2, flouts the principles of free, prior and informed consent of the affected land users, particularly the indigenous people. 3, ignore the impacts on social, economic, and gender relations and on the environment. 4, avoid the transparent contracts with clear and binding commitments on employment and benefit sharing. 5, eschew democratic planning, independent oversight, and meaningful participation. Those are some of the descriptions that have been given by Oxfarm to describe land grab. The insinuation of land grab by a New Forest Company is totally false, as far as I'm concerned, and as far as the government of Uganda is concerned. Central Forest Reserve are gazetted areas held in trust by the government for the people of Uganda for generations, and managed, conserved, and developed by National Forest Authority in partnership with government and non-government institutions, the private sector, and local communities. This is constitutional, and a legal regime which successful governments have adhered to in Uganda. We recognize that due to the breakdown of law and order and formal government machinery in 1970s and 1980s, many things went wrong in Uganda. Restoration of rule of law, protection of human rights, the building of the economy had been the landmarks or the hallmarks of the NRM government for the past 2 decades. Oxfarm called the allocation and licensing of the forest reserve to New Forest Company a land grab. National Forest Authority publicly invited applications from interested commercial plantation developers for partnership in commercial plantation development in the central forest reserves. The New Forest Company, along with thousands of others, applied to invest in the forest sector in Uganda, specifically to establish and develop private commercial plantations under the Public-Private Partnership Policy, PPP, of government. In accordance with the National Forest and Tree Planting Act of 2003, the National Forest Authority licensed New Forest Company 8,104 hectares in Namwasa Central Forest Reserve in the Mubende district and 8,700 hectares in Luunga Central Forest Reserve in the Kibuga Kyankwanzi district. Government established the PPP policy after a wide consultation with stakeholders as a means of attracting investment into the forestry sector and support government's efforts at restoring the degraded central forest reserves, increase the forest cover and biomass in the country, and ensure a sustainable supply of forest products to the growing Ugandan economy. Provision of local employment and contribution to the preservation of the green environment would be the spin-off effects of this allocation. Oxfarm talked about the evictions. The eviction of encroachers, that is illegal occupants, out of Namwasa and Luunga Central Forest Reserve were processes for which National Forest Authority was solely responsible and mandated by the National Forestry and Tree Planting Act of 2003. In the case of the evictions, a presidential order was issued and implemented by interministerial team coordinated by the third Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Internal Affairs. In the case of eviction in the Luunga Central Forest Reserve, it was coordinated by the Kibuga District Security Committee under the chairmanship of the Resident District Commissioner. On-ground operations were coordinated by the Resident District Commissioner as chairpersons of the respective district security committees. Evictions of encroachers to restore the physical integrity of the Central Forest Reserve, the responsibility that NFA has continued to undertake in all other forest reserves. In the case of Namwasa and Luunga, government recognizes and appreciates that the investor acted way beyond their mandate as a private investor in ensuring adequate stakeholder involvement and consultation. I think that is a positive involvement because as the investor, they didn't have the responsibility to involve the stakeholders because they had invested, but they went ahead to make sure that the communities were involved. So I think that is a very positive development that we should be thanking them for. Meetings between the various actors were held in order to ensure open and consistent dialogue in a process that stretched over several months. Indeed, I can confirm that the process of evicting the encroachers in Namwasa and the Luunga Central Forest Reserve is still ongoing, and that has been the most peaceful and well-managed encroachment experience in the history of NFA. Subsequently, ongoing evictions are all based on the experiences of Namwasa and Luunga. If I may throw more light on this one, when we came to evict the encroachers from Namwasa and Luunga, at least I was in Namwasa, we made sure that we registered all the encroachers because that was the forest reserve way back 4 years, like 3 years. But we started registering those who came in before 1992 to to know that these people came in, because before 1992, the law was not effective, this law of 2005 or 2003. So we gave an allowance of going back to 1992. And those who are found to have been there in 1992 were allowed to stay or to be compensated for whatever they have been doing there. And we referred them to the land board, Minister of Lands, to use the land fund to compensate them. They may have been compensated, they may be in the process of being compensated, but at least they have been identified for compensation. Those who came thereafter were actually encroachers who took advantage of some people coming in and being not taxed. So we actually gave them time to harvest whatever they had planted. Most of them had very temporary housing, very temporary, but they were mainly cultivating. And the biggest crop there was maize and groundnuts. So we gave them time to harvest their crop and then find wherever they came from. We even went ahead to register where each and every one of them came from. There were people who said came from Rakai, and I had to find out whereabout in Rakai they came from. Others came from Kisoro, others came from where. So we took trouble to identify who came from where. And we worked with the local authorities wherever they came from, make sure that these people went back and settled, because we had their names, we had their details. So I want to assure you that this was the most peaceful exercise that we have carried out in terms of evicting encroachers. Government had pursued a consistent policy of ensuring and protecting the rights of all land users as required under the Constitution, in a process that is ongoing up to now. The result of the process is the Land Act of 1998 and the subsequent amendments enacted by Parliament in conformity with the provisions of the 1995 Constitution. Central Forest Reserve is not all covered under the Land Act of 1998. The National Forest Authority has a well-established guidelines and procedures for allocating and licensing land in Central Forest Reserve for private tree growing. The license agreement is a legal document with clearly spelled out terms and conditions for the investor, and it is the basis for monitoring and evaluating the licensees operating in the forest reserve. Therefore, to imply that new forest company grabbed the land is to imply that all the 378 tree planting licenses covering over 66,136 hectares that NFA has issued since 2005, and offers of 1,502 investors for 1,104 hectares that have been given the tree farming permits are all now going. That means ever since NFA was established, all the work that had been done is illegal and land grabbing. And I don't think that's what Uganda wants to describe. Therefore, the formal land allocation are not land grabs, and the government will not totally abdicate its constitutional obligation to protect Central Forest Reserve, and in the process undermine the socio-economic rights of countless Ugandans in the present and future generations. Such an insinuation can only stem from a neo-colonial mindset, and is totally disrespectful of the people and institutions of government of Uganda, including Parliament, which legislates, and the respective laws that are essential to the proper functioning of the free and democratic society such as Uganda. Yes, these have been some of the strong words, and I really want to emphasize. Because I've been working with Oxfarm. In 2009, I carried them over to Copenhagen to advance the stove, and I carried that clay stove, the sigiri, with them. So they had all the opportunity to come and talk to me as somebody who manages the forest. They said we have a problem here, so that we could talk about it. But it was really disrespectful to make this report, go and launch it internationally before they come to talk to us. In fact, since I got to know about this was last week, because I've not been around, when I was called to come and I didn't want to come and meet you before I talked to them. I wrote to them, I requested them to come and meet me. It's unfortunate, a week had gone by, they have not come to meet me. So I have no option but to disown this very act. I therefore call upon Oxfarm International to review their findings and correct the false impression made in all the minds of those who have access to this report about government and the forest company in the role of land grabbing. There is also an apparent contempt of court arising out of disregard and legal proceedings in the court. That was another allegation by Oxfarm. The National Forest Authority implements the National Forestry and Tree Planting Act in conformity with the executive orders issued from time to time by His Excellency the President. In the case of Namwasa evictions, of the very few who resisted voluntary vacation, their eviction was carried out in a total conformity with the law. The National Forest Authority actions in Ruunga were guided by judgment made by the High Court of Uganda as far back as 1990. The judgment, among other issues, clearly clarified the definition of encroachment, confirmed the fact that one cannot be illegally evicted from a kibanja in a Central Forest Reserve, as one cannot legally own a kibanja in a Central Forest Reserve. You take this one. You cannot be illegally evicted from a kibanja in a Central Forest Reserve, but at the same time you cannot legally own a kibanja in a Central Forest Reserve. And that the government cannot be a trespasser in a Central Forest Reserve. The eviction of the few who resisted voluntary revocation on the Namwasa was under the oversight of an interministerial committee headed by the 3rd Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Internal Affairs. That's why we brought in Internal Affairs, because this became an internal issue, an issue of internal affairs. And they are the people to enforce when persuasion fails. So the Minister of Internal Affairs was there to make sure that the people are evicted, those who accept to go voluntarily went, but those who resisted were evicted. For record, it is important to state that all evictions, where they are necessary, have always been and will continue to be the responsibility of National Forest Authority, which may call upon the support of other organs of government. An investor is not allowed to undertake evictions, and that government of Uganda never violated any court orders in the case of Namwasa and the Ruunga Central Forest Reserve. It is not true, therefore, to insinuate that New Forest Company was responsible for the eviction, which are an ongoing legal obligation of government. I therefore wish to call upon Oxfarm to review their findings in regard to this view of correcting again the false impression made in the minds of those who have read and access to this report. There is also an indication of human rights abuses, including illegal evictions. I confirm that there are no cases reported to the authorities with respect to violation of human rights during the evictions. At least I followed the eviction exercise. So I therefore request Oxfarm, as good friends and partners in development, together with the Uganda Land Alliance, to bring the evidence of such action by government against New Forest Company or anyone else to the police and the Uganda Human Rights Commission. Government will ensure that appropriate investigations are carried out and accountants are brought to book. If there was in any way somebody who was harassed, human rights abused, free to go to the Human Rights Commission, can go to the police, government will look into it, and should be compensated. Another case was the failure to provide compensation or provide for damages to affected people. The number of enclosures on the Central Forest Reserve are not static, and they fluctuate from time to time. This is due to the fluid nature of the most migrant communities who illegally temporarily settle, cultivate, or graze in the forest reserve. National Forest Authority establish the number of encroachers at Namwasa Central Forest Reserve, and this has increased to 584. That included persons originating from districts of Kabale, Kisoro, Kibale, and some from Rwanda. This was established in 2006. The number was 584. In September 2009, His Excellency the President issued the executive directive to ensure the security of forest lands for Kisita Gold Mine and a new forest company. And the Interministerial Committee headed by the Right Honorable Kiruna Kibejinja, Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Internal Affairs, was tasked to oversee this process. It included an instruction to identify and compensate by relocation all encroachers who had settled on land prior to 1992. In line with the executive order halting evictions, 18 families were found eligible for the compensation, satisfying the criteria of settlement prior to 1992. To date, due to delay by the responsible Minister of Lands, Housing and Urban Development in resettling the 18 families, they are still living in Namwasa Central Forest Reserve. And the NFA, that is the National Forest Authority, instructed the new forest company not to undertake activities on the 20 hectares occupied by those families as the government works out their compensation and relocation. So there are only 18 families that have been allowed to stay, awaiting their compensation or relocation. And the new forest company is not supposed to tamper with them. The National Forest Authority registered 936 families, and this included 6,242 people, as settled in Ruunga Central Forest Reserve in 2005. Due to the High Court judgment in the case of Ruunga Central Forest Reserve referred to above, government is firmly of the opinion that none of the 935 households affected at Ruunga at that time qualify for compensation. Government is firmly of the opinion that none of these families, 935, do qualify. They don't qualify. In other words, government believes that they don't qualify for compensation. It should be noted further that the people currently settled in the area of Ruunga Central Forest Reserve, outside the area licensed by New Forest Company have not yet been evicted. So areas, people who are outside the land that has been allocated New Forest Company have not been touched. But those who are in the area that has been allocated, government found out that they did not have a case to be there, and so there is no need for them to compensate. We only gave them a time to relocate after harvesting whatever they have. But the majority of them are cattle keepers. They are nomadic, they move on. So definitely they cannot lay claim on this land because they are always moving. It is therefore not correct to insinuate that the New Forest Company is responsible for the issue of compensation to former encroachers. Compensation is the sole preserve of government, which is fully aware of its obligation and will fulfill them in the due course where they are applicable. Indeed, the government has on several occasions forbidden New Forest Company from attempting to effect compensation. It would therefore be more helpful for Oxfarm and the Uganda Land Alliance to share with the government any data on individuals who, in their opinion, qualify for compensation rather than making a blanket accusation that does not help anyone, least of all the people whose interests they are supposed to be championing. There is a need for reform of policies, standards and procedures to eliminate abuse with respect to land use. That was the recommendation by the report of Oxfarm. Government has already welcomed all those individuals, members of civil society, and other institutions and agencies who wish to participate in the formulation of public policy in Uganda, including policies and laws on land, forestry, investment, and human rights in Uganda. The door will continue to be open to those who wish to do so in a manner that is respectful, transparent, honest, and mindful of the legitimate opinions and interests of other stakeholders. In conclusion, I wish to affirm that the government views the New Forest Company as a responsible investor who has performed satisfactorily with the legal, policy, and regulatory framework of Uganda. New Forest Company has further demonstrated a clear commitment to the development of Uganda in both moral and legal sense, as it's demonstrated by its community development program around the forest reserve. Where the model that the NFA has piloted out with New Forest Company on managing encroachment cannot be perfect. It cannot be, by any stretch of imagination, cannot be labeled a land grab. It is in the public interest of Uganda and all Ugandans that we learn and improve on this model rather than condemning it out of hand on a superficial grounds. I wish to reiterate the government's commitment to upholding the rule of law in this country and to invite anyone with evidence of the commission of crimes or abuse of human rights to share them with and prove evidence to the government agencies like police and human rights commission to ensure that justice prevails. I therefore call upon Oxfarm International and the Uganda Land Alliance to take a note of the above and ensure that more accurate versions of the report is issued. With that, I want to say, I think they owe me a dialogue. Thank you very much. But we have come out as government to let the international community know that this was a report that came out in bad faith because they did not consult the people who are managing the forest. They made a report in Uganda, publicized it in UK and London to justify maybe the funding that they are getting. Because if it was purposes for the common person here in Uganda, I would have imagined that they would have started with my ministry. Say, hey minister, here is the problem, how do you go about it? But the fact that they went to UK and the US, that is where they are getting the money, so they were making a report for their funders, and I think that is wrong on their part, and I'm sure their funders will also realize that their funding is going for a wrong course. So I believe that even if they don't adjust, they know that they cannot do it again. And if they do it again, they will lose their credibility. That's one. Two, why did people move from Raka and wherever to Namwasa and Ruunga? You know, we have a problem, and you people know it. This land of Uganda, the map you see, is fixed. The borders are not elastic, but our population is growing. Where Uganda, when I was young, may have been 12 million, we are now 33 million. Definitely there is pressure on the natural resources, leave alone land. There is pressure. So people are moving to look for where to settle. And because they are not sensitized enough, they don't know that forests are not wasteland or free land. So they moved in search of where they can put their homes and grow some food. It is understandable, but they need to be guided. And as I said, this thing happened because there was a break in the law. You know, the 1970s and 1980s brought some form of lawlessness among the minds of people. People just move. Even here, when you move around Kampala, you can see somebody comes out of the block just on the drainage. So if the Kampala State Council comes and demolishes it, it's not because they are doing something wrong. Neither was the man who put a kiosk on the drainage seriously meaning to offend. He wanted survival, but he put it in the wrong place. So that's why we are saying these people are trying to grow food, they are trying to settle, they are trying to do, but they went to the wrong place. Because these central forest reserves are reserved for the future generation. They serve us, but they are meant to serve the future generation. So when you come in and you grow your 10 acres of maize, you are actually jeopardizing the future generations. So that's why we are saying we are trying to find out where they came from. Can they be resettled? And the majority of them have been resettled, except the 18 families. Then, BPC, why has it taken you long? Yes, I must confess, I have not been in saturation. I was out of office for 3 months, and I think this happened when I was out of office. But what I know that National Forest Authority put out a statement in the papers. But of course, National Forest Authority may be taken as the independent being an authority. You see, the really people want to hear from government. When you talk about government, they're actually targeting the ministers. So I only happened to learn from him when he called me, please can you come and make a statement about this one. That's when I called NF and said, what is there? And they gave me a report of what has been happening. That's why I'm here today. We are sorry that we were not unable to do it because my two ministers of state are new, so they couldn't come out authoritatively and talk about it. But I was there in Namwasa, I've been to Luwonga, I saw the exercise, and I think it was the most transparent exercise. Any other question?
I'll take, yes.
Tie up with the African concern, because we have an African position. We are not going there as individual countries, we are going there as a region. Because we realize that by standing as individual countries, we get fragmented and manipulated. But when you go as a region, an African continent, we have a voice, and we all stand by the same voice and the same decision. Our concern, as it has been in the previous 2 years, 2 years, is that Africa deserves to be supported to adapt to the vagaries of climate change. So adaptation fund is number one of the issues that we want to discuss. Because we have seen what happened in Bududa. We have seen what is happening in Karamoja. We come out helpless. We end up borrowing money. And yet these are not caused by our acts. These are consequences of acts taken outside our boundaries. So that's one. Secondly, we are also saying that Africa, we are trying to protect the environment, preserving the forests. We have got a number of forests, Mabira, I'm sure you are confident about Mabira, Budonga, and all that. We are protecting these forests, not because we have got a lot of carbon to store there. The carbon we are storing in those forests are emissions from elsewhere. So we are acting as a sink. So if you are going to preserve this and conserve the natural forests that we have, there must be a consideration for it. That's why we want to propagate this red issue. Restoration and the conservation of natural forest. We must get our fair share if we are going to protect Mabira with its so many hectares. What does Uganda stand to benefit? If you are going to protect Dongo, if you are going to protect whatever forest, we want to see how much we hope to get out of that. And finally, we are also looking at what happened after 2012. Because 2012 is what we call the Kyoto Protocol. That's where the developed countries accepted to reduce their emissions by a certain percentage. So what happens, because the emission, that agreement stops at the end of 2012, what will happen after 2012? We want to have another agreement which commits the developed countries to further reduction in the emissions of green gases. So if we don't get that one, that means come 2012, we are in a dilemma. But if we succeed to get an agreement on after 2012, that assures us that even thereafter, 8 or 10 years, we have the base to fall back to. So those are some of the issues we are going to do.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Once again, Honorable Minister, that comes to a close of